my first class had, the first day I had 25 students. By day 2, I had 19 because 6 parents switched out of the class because they saw me and they were like, there's no freaking way, before I even got a word in.
As a parent, I would want to know, like, do you not think that that is okay or they're right to withdraw when they see you? Because ultimately, you're probably an excellent educator.
I appreciate that.
I have no doubt about that. But I think we get into muddy waters when we start trying to take that choice away from the parent.
Do I think that it is okay for a parent to see me and go, not around my kid? No, I don't think that's okay. I feel like that's really crossing the line because you are, for lack of better words, discriminating against me openly. That's like seeing a black teacher and being like, there's no way. It is the same. It is the same.
It's not the same, and here's why. You can't control what color your skin is, but you can control if you decide to put on makeup or not in the morning. Secondly, ideologies can be discriminated against. We do it all the time. If we saw somebody that was wearing a Ku Klux Klan mask and teaching children, we would say, we don't want that ideology being taught to our kids. In the same way, if you as a man are dressing up, wearing makeup, and teaching our children, you're teaching them that that's okay. And I don't believe that it's okay. And it's not your job as a teacher to push your ideology onto children. It's the parent's job to put their ideology into children.
Sometimes with school choice, it gets a little bit.
All right. Welcome back, guys. So we started off with that hard-hitting video here with our guest, Zach from CAZ TV. And we're going to kind of cover these sort of controversial topics today. We kind of labeled this as how to kind of protect the kids from these woke culture ideas. We're going to talk about some drag queen stuff, some just dress code-based stuff. But yeah, Zach, why don't you first tell us about what you do, what you guys are doing with CAZ TV. We know who you are, but the audience might not. And then tell us, give us some context on what led to that video.
Yeah, so my name is Zach with CAZ TV. It stands for Christian and Zach TV. The other guy is Christian. We played football together in college. When we were in college, people always used to say, like, we do skits and stuff in college in the locker room. People were like, you guys need to make your own channel or YouTube page or something. And so we started doing some skits on TikTok, and a couple of them did really well. And then we started kind of transitioning into doing lives and having conversations with people about like dating and culture through a biblical worldview. And then just kept growing. And then we did a couple reactions like that video to some of the videos that were circulating on social media. And then here we are. So I guess the background behind that video is just, we've all seen a lot of this kind of, I guess you could call it wokeness around certain things where it's like, I guess the thing that really caught my attention about this video was the fact that he was comparing putting on makeup, which is a choice, to being black, which is not a choice. And it's always bothered me when different communities kind of try to ride the coattails of issues that certain people went through at one particular point in time. And I don't think that's right. I don't think that's fair. And I was like, you know what? Someone's got to call it out. And so I made a video on it. Probably millions of other people probably did the same thing too. So, but yeah, it just really caught me off guard that he would compare those two things. And that people in the comments were like agreeing with them. And then so when we posted it, we had kind of split comments. Some people were like, yeah, it's the same. Some people were like, no, it's not the same. This guy's crazy. And then there was a guy that wanted to kind of have a conversation about it live on Instagram, and we did. And I think it went pretty well.
You actually, if I remember right, you opened that up like in a comment, right? You're like, if anyone wants to come debate this, and he had the stones to come on live and do that, right?
Yeah, he did. And I think
maybe he didn't.
He did, and well, yeah, maybe, I don't know, but he came on and we spoke about it, and I think that's kind of what we need to be able to do is like have conversations about why you disagree with me, understand the intent behind why I disagree with you and you disagree with me, and then see if, we can come to some conclusion of understanding that my disagreement shouldn't just automatically be labeled as hate. And that's kind of what the discussion led to.
Yeah. I remember hearing about identity politics for the first time in my life. And I was like, what is this? And you notice that when you engage somebody, they're going to hate you before knowing you. So that conversation's just off the table because they just go by your predispositions and beliefs and judge you. So they like to win, so they don't want to engage you. So it's just a moot point to start a conversation. So it's good to start a conversation with somebody and be able to get into arguments and show people that this is okay. Showing people it's okay to do that is hard to do these days because everybody shuts down.
Well, the problem is you can't really properly debate now because you can't define terms because people have this cognitive dissonance that's so rampant within we don't even know what a woman is anymore. You can't even, unless you're a biologist, which even they can't define what a woman is anymore. Supreme Court justice can't define what a woman is anymore.
Yeah.
Having a debate where we have to define terms is a rare thing today. It's so emotionally charged that just having a difference of opinion, which a lot of this actually is, because when I heard you say, it's ideology shouldn't be allowed in school, I was thinking of, obviously, well, first thing goes through my mind is like when they took out the Pledge of Allegiance, they're like under God, or they were going at the Christians saying, oh, well, we don't want your ideology in school, and it's and you brought the Ku Klux Klan, and then we have like this idea that ideology should be completely left out of public schooling, right? If you want to go to a private school, go to a Catholic school. If you want to go to like a gay-for school, then go to a gay-for school. I don't know if they exist, but I wouldn't doubt if they will exist.
There's a lot of them
in
in California.
So I think there's a school. I know there's a school here where I live. That actually is a school that's like designed. I believe it's like the Rainbow School or something like that, and it's designed for people who really want that ideology pushed harder than it already is in public schools, which I don't know how much harder you can push it, but yeah.
Yeah, it's weird how it becomes a central point. And I feel like for a lot of the more rational people, they take apart an argument and they use different forms of reasoning. So you have deductive forms of reason, abductive, and inductive. And for conversations that would usually be scientifically sort of describing the content within it. So here's my reasons. They're facts. They've been scientifically backed up. This is why I have my thesis, right? So that's a deductive argument. And that used to be the standard when we talked about biology. And so now we're entering into this like inductive argument, which is absolutely nothing to do with other than with preference defining your ideology. So you have this intermixture of liquids that are they don't want to blend. I forget the name for it.
Non-homogeneous.
Non-homogeneous. Yeah. So what I've noticed is the discussion is, I think what my mind goes to when I think about this, now that it's been a few years, is the rational sort of way of getting across to them is never going to work. My brother and I were talking about Ian McGilchrist in his book, The Master and the Emissary, and he describes left and right brain tendencies and how they manifest in culture. Over the history of humanity, you have different epochs of time where one, the left or the right, was more dominant, and it manifested differently in the arts and in culture. And the more we were talking about this morning, it made sense to me that the urbanization of humans, this sort of left brain tendency to organize, which capitalism has taken and actually just blown up, sort of inflamed this left brain preference of progress, has created a sort of delusion in the population, because what happens when you have a left brain sort of culture where the mechanism, that's the Industrial Revolution, people want to differentiate because the sameness, like being same, that's what happens when you're in a big city. Everything becomes the same. Everybody's the same. It causes them to hallucinate solutions to finding a way to differentiate themselves in society. And so you end up with these abstract, sort of absurd ways with like the transvestite or the LGBTQ of people wanting to find a way to differentiate themselves as a result from these urbanized, our urbanization has caused mass hallucination. And it makes sense because humans do not like that situation. If you talk to somebody who's in New York, they're more isolated in their mind and heart than somebody who lives in a rural country town. And so they are more desperate to find a way to differentiate themselves. And so I see that as like we see that as sort of a disease, you know, it's like a psychological pathogen resulting from this urbanization and this left-brainedness, and that's why they are so desperate to have people accept it, you know, and you know, even from my own experience, when I've met gay people in my life, they've been very interested in getting attention. Like they sort of thrive on the attention, being sort of a ham or verboice, and it's like their idea of being, you know, philanthropy or giving back, this humanitarian agenda that they claim to have is really just them wanting more attention. Like, how are they helping the society? How are they what's the end of this other than them getting more and more attention? How are they helping the community? Human rights are much broader than, you know, a teacher who's in school trying to be a woman who's a man, you know, and then feeling not accepted.
He wasn't even trying to be a woman, right? He's just kind of dressing differently.
Who knows? I don't know.
Seemed like a woman to me, dude.
I think
trying to be a woman.
Well, here's the issue that I kind of have a problem with is when we are just, I guess, the idea that if someone disagrees with you, it has to be because they just hate me, or they hate these people, or they hate those people. You know, when I went into this discussion with this guy that disagreed about the video, the first thing that, you know, we did agree with was, okay, one's a choice, one's not. And I was glad to see that we could agree on that. We kind of started the framework with, okay, we agree that the color of your skin or your ethnicity isn't a choice, but deciding to put on makeup in the morning is, right? And then he was like, okay, yeah. So we're on the same page there. And then it kind of went down this interesting trail where he kind of said, you know, well, what's wrong with makeup? Makeup, he's not pushing anything on the kids. There's nothing wrong with wearing makeup. You know, it's not like he's pushing any ideology, he's pushing any ideas. He's just wearing makeup. It's just who he is. And then, you know, I was just like, well, the parents just don't see that as acceptable for teaching children. They don't see that acceptable in, you know, the workplace. To which he just went ahead and jumped the conclusion to, no, they don't like the fact that he's gay. And I was like, when in that video did he ever say he's gay? He never said he was gay. So how are you drawing the conclusion to him being gay and makeup when you just said makeup doesn't mean anything?
Assuming my gender, dude. Yeah, go to
And
jail.
so that's the thing, though. The thing is, like, in this discussion, he said makeup doesn't mean anything. It's just guys can wear makeup, doesn't mean anything. It doesn't point to any sexuality, doesn't point to anything inappropriate in school. But then he assumed the parents moved their kids out because he's gay. I'm like, well, how do you know he's gay? If makeup
That's because they're not using deductive reasoning. They don't know the rules of engagement when it comes to an argument. It's like a basic foundationary element that's completely missing. So, you know, when they shift to their side, because of, think about the culture behind their movement, right? It's getting rights. Now they want more rights. So now they have more rights than you do concerning an argument. So they can invoke these they're non sequiturs is basically what they are.
Emotional responses. But I think, like, even let's hypothetically take the fact that the parents removed him because they made the assumption of A, he was gay, or B, I guess maybe he was trans or something, doing something in that world. If they made that decision based on that, that's equally valid too.
Absolutely.
Like, I think.
100%.
Yeah, so here's basically the argument that I kind of tried to take, which was I spoke with one of my good friends that we talked through it a little bit, and we realized that everyone draws the line in the sand somewhere.
Right.
And the idea that I asked him, okay, what is inappropriate? Is anything inappropriate? To which he said, oh, of course. You draw the line in the sand right here. You can't wear a thong in front of kids. You can't do something like that. To which I said, okay, you drew the line in the sand there. And the parents drew the line in the sand here. You're assuming the reason they drew the line in the sand there is because they're hateful. While there's another person on the other side of your line that's assuming you're hateful too. So we got to get out of this. If you're going to hold up the sign of I can just pull out the hate card whenever they draw the line in the sand and I'm on the other side of it, someone else can do that for you too. And I think that's the way you logically kind of argue against that.
Yeah, it shows the hypocrisy in it, as well as it's so arbitrary on where he has an issue. And I was waiting for him to say it too when I was listening to him, because you were pulling that out of him, and I knew the issue wasn't necessarily the dress code thing. It was that assumption he was making. It was the parents didn't freaking care about his dress. It was that they thought he was gay. And so I'm that's the real issue he has. And that's the real issue I'm sure the people had in the comments, not really the dress thing. And then I also noticed he was kind of taking this men and women are equal thing, which is also the problem with that whole argument, is he was trying to say, well, if we're going to make a rule for the employer that men can't wear makeup to work, it has to apply to women too. And that's just making the assumption, men and women are equal.
I've ever heard in my life.
You're going to make women, if you had a dress code of men wearing suits to work, you're going to make women wear a male suit? No.
Well, here's where it falls apart. The reason we're making the rule about the guy not wearing makeup in front of the kids is because it clearly does express sexuality in the classroom. A woman wearing makeup doesn't tell you that she's certain sexuality. It doesn't bring that into the
Who wears makeup generally? Women.
It's a cultural norm.
Actors. Women and actors. I mean, let's just draw the line. If a man wears makeup like a woman, then he's trying to be a woman.
Right.
If a woman cuts her tits off, and tries to get on testosterone, then she's obviously trying to be a man.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what they're projecting. That is what people see. That is how we understand. If I see a cake on the table and it looks like a cake and it's made out of plastic, it still looks like a cake.
Yeah.
It might not be the real cake, but it looks like a cake. I'm going to call it a cake, right?
Right.
The real issue is when their double standard of tolerance to intolerance becomes apparent. Because when she was that's discrimination, it's not okay for that parent to pull his child from my class. That's where I see the major red flag. Because as a parent, that's my child. Right. I can choose what school he wants to go to, whether I like the location, whether I like the color on the building. It doesn't matter. It's my kid. I don't care. It's my choice. It's my child. At the end of the day.
I think the bigger issue that kind of surrounds this whole topic, in which is the reason why it's kind of illogical sometimes, is that a lot of people that are very passionate about this, like this guy was, they see it as a good versus evil battle. And they see themselves on the good side. They see it as, I'm fighting a battle of oppression. I'm fighting a battle where it's the Avengers against Thanos. And anyone trying to stop, where there's a clear good guy and bad guy. And the thing I love about certain shows, I don't know if you ever watched anime growing up or not, but there's a show called Naruto that I kind of had to stop watching a little bit because there's some weird parts in there. But it is really interesting because every bad guy has a backstory. And when you watch that backstory, you realize there's not a lot of black and white when it comes to why someone wants to do something a certain way. And the issue that I have with a lot of these people that are very extreme when it comes to the transgender rights or whatever is that they view it in a black and white way where they are clearly the good guy and these people are clearly the bad guy, and the only reason that they want to do this is because they're bad and they hate me. It's not because of any other thing that they've thought of. Like, you know what? Maybe this is a bad idea because of boom, 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 boom. Not because I just don't like people that look like you or dress like you or act like you. It's because I see the problem with doing this and running a society this way.
It's a culture war. And when you have a culture war, what happens in war, when people go to war, when a soldier goes, straps a gun on and shoots another person, killing them, he's objectifying that person. They are the enemy. And that's what happens in a culture war. They no longer see a human being. They don't see a person with an intellect and reason behind whatever rationale that they're trying to present to you. They see an object of an adversary or someone that's hateful. And that's what they're relying on, the social media and the whole emotionality, because that's what it becomes in this culture war. Is the reason has been evaporated. It's been erased. People don't see people. They see objects.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, and let's talk about, so like, why do we, as obviously traditional people, view this problem as a problem as far as the children? Like, we don't, I think we can all agree, we probably don't want the drag queen up teaching our children how to, you know, their ABCs. And why is that?
That's an easy one. I mean, if I'm around, my duty is to protect my child, then I don't want to subject him to chaos. I don't want to subject him to craziness. I don't want to subject him to confusedness. Not in the way that, like, when I was a kid, Joe and I actually our dad had this friend, and he was a tranny, dude, like hardcore, and he loved riding dirt bikes, fixing cars, spoke in a baritone voice.
Giant boobs.
Like, he was the most bizarre thing, and our dad was like, yo, you can go hang out with this guy. He's super confused, but, you know, he's a lovable, nice guy. Just like all four of us, we love any one of these LGBTQ people. We love them.
Right.
It's not a matter of us because we reject the way that they're identifying, meaning that we reject them as a person and this hate issue starts coming up. We love them. But for a parent, I want my kid to understand that what order looks like, and I want to ramify that as much as I can. I want to try and indoctrinate my child as a measure of my responsibility. This is God's child. So I know what the Bible tells me I should do. So I need to make his environment as close to that in my power as possible. And if that means making hard decisions, like not buying a new car and sending my kid, not being able to afford sending my kid to, say, public school, then I'm going to do that. Because the chaos that's exhibited in some of these people, and this is our opinion, we're entitled to it, we're tolerant to them, but as far as indoctrination is something that will change a child. And we believe that. We believe that by being around that without proper explanation, that child will be impacted. And we see it all the time with kids getting gender and sex changes. And then as a child, you don't know what's going on. You're the parent. You're supposed to be their surrogate conscience, making those important decisions for them. And so as Christians, we know that when we see somebody who's having a problem with their gender or having this chaos, this sin in their life, and we just say it's a non-issue or we accept them, we're doing our children a disservice and we're being improper with the way we're representing the world to them.
Mm-hmm. And I think the argument that they try to say is, well, you really think that would make your kid want to do it, you know? And I pulled up some stats. Pew Research Center or whatever it's called. Statistic Research Department. Statista.
I think I got the same stats written down.
Oh, okay, cool, yeah.
Because I had I was looking at what percentage of populations identifying in the alphabet group.
Yeah,
and,
based on generations.
And like the overall picture, like going from 2012 to 2022, this was all ages. It went from 3.5% to 7.1%. So it was like a doubling just in 10 years. And with that's population at broad. So that's a huge number.
Massive.
And then just looking at generational differences, 21% of Gen Z right now identifies in that group.
1 in every 5. So here's the crazy thing. Okay, if it was all societal, right? There's no there's no like it's all just societal, and everyone really is these things. You're telling me in the first generation, or in 1995 and earlier, that generation less than 1%. The next generation, baby boomers, 2%. It was always below 5% until you get to millennials and Gen Z. 1 in every 5 Gen Z, according to the stat, claims that they are born in the wrong body, LGBT, whatever.
Right.
And nowhere else in human history has it been like that.
So obviously these culture effects that they're saying don't matter are changing things drastically.
Really matter.
And Dave, pull that comment up that Amy left, because this is huge. The increase of self-ID trans youth is exponential. There's definitely social contagion.
Yeah.
That's super true. Like if you read
it's called propaganda. It's
what's
called kids are malleable.
But there's something with the young girls, like they like do it as like groups of them. They'll transition together. I can't remember her name. Somebody wrote a book on it.
Herd insanity.
But anyway, it's like happening, like especially with the young women, and it is a social contagion, especially with them, because it'll be like a whole friend group.
Go to the bathroom together. Go to the surgeon together.
Yeah, we have a friend or a guy in our group, Ari. He was telling me about some of the people he knew from high school. Like 5 of the girls he knew that are now in college at the super woke college they're at. 4 of the 5 are now transitioned to men.
Right, and for those who don't understand, Mimetic Desire by Rene Girard. He wrote. He's a Catholic. He wrote extensively about mimetic desire. Coined the term. Mimetic desire is basically paying attention to the influence and the power of influence from your surrounding culture, society, family. The idea of status. Now we've put gays and trans, not we, but society, our culture, Americanized, has put them on a high status. Massive status has been given, massive attention. So being mimetic creatures that we are, we look to, like basically herd, we look at what's getting attention and why. It must be of value. If it's getting attention, then it must be of value. The more attention it has, the higher the value, the higher the status. So this is what's going on. A very small part of our population is getting a ton of attention. They must be doing something right. They must have some massive reason for being. It must be important.
Well, in some of those groups, though, like at that college in the college in town, your new college, whatever it's called, the woke place.
Yeah.
Ari was saying, like, if you don't like identify in this group, the alphabet group, you're almost like an outsider.
You are an
outsider.
outsider.
So like common.
Yeah.
Like you are now the outsider if you're just like the normal straight person.
This happened in Nazi Germany. And it comes from certain broken states where the identity crisis is already there within kids. Kids are already struggling. They want to find out, how do I set up how am I different? What part of me did God make that's different? What is my purpose? And they identify, and all throughout history, they identify, and they go through these little identity crises, and it's just part of growing up. It's just normal. You're supposed to wonder who you are when you're a kid, because you're a kid, and you haven't figured it out, and you're going to figure it out, and it's tough shit, and it's not easy. Okay, but what's going on now? What happened in Hitler with the Nazis is that they were able to indoctrinate kids early on. They took all the crosses out of the schools, replaced them with swastikas. Okay, they took out every bit of Christianity and they changed it into what they called, I think it was like fast Christianity, where Jesus had blonde hair. Right, you could still say your prayers, you could still be quote a Christian, however, you weren't a Christian at all. So we went further past this. So they would actually, and it reminds me of Kim Jong-il, where they would deify Hitler, like long live the Fuhrer, may he be eternal, all these types of deifying, omnipresent terms that you would give to a god. And they did this, and the kids really believed this. They call them the little, I forget, it reminded me of Brave New World. These are Brave New World. So this is how easily kids are malleable. If you have the right indoctrination and you have the right status involved, these kids will believe anything.
Just think of how much easier it probably is today to do that because the families are so broken up.
Yeah.
That's the
like
key
50,
factor.
60
there.
years
That's
ago.
The key factor.
Yeah, go ahead.
So there's this interesting book that my wife and I have been reading called Family Driven Faith. It's by a guy named Vodi Bakum. And he talks about how there's an alarming rate of kids leaving the faith once they hit a certain age within the millennials and like Gen Z, things like that. And he found that a lot of the parents what they end up doing is they toss the responsibility of discipleship onto the church. They toss the responsibility of teaching my child how to be a upstanding citizen on the schools. And I used to, before I got into what I do currently, I actually used to do fundraisers for schools and still kind of do it on the side every now and then. But I've been to some schools where the principals will tell me, hey, you know, these parents are just not what they were 10, 15, 20 years ago. We were supposed to be a supplement of whatever the parents are teaching the children. Now, the parents just toss them to us. And this is a private school. This is a private Catholic school I'm talking about. Now the parents just toss them to us and say, teach them. Teach them the morals, teach them all the stuff. And he was like, that's not our responsibility. But what a lot of public schools have done and a lot of other schools, they'll take advantage of that and they'll say, yeah, we'll teach them whatever
Exactly what they want.
we want to teach them. Yeah, thanks. Just give them to us.
Yeah,
and then the kids get back home and they're arguing with dad about like boys and girls. And the dad's like, what are they teaching you here at the school? And one of my friends, Hafiz, pointed out the fact that, and someone else probably pointed it out before him too, but he talked to me about how where we leave a gap, bad people will enter that gap. So back in the day, we just saw school board. That's for people who don't have time to do anything else. I've got a job. I have to take care of my family, kids, and everything. I'm going to go do this. That's not important. And so the only other person that had time to do that and saw, oh, well, no one's going there. The blue-haired, 400-pound feminist lady is like, I'll go. I'll do it. I'll teach them my ideology. And you get a bunch of people like that in there. No one knows who the school board people are. And then the kid comes home with the syllabus one day. And they're like, okay, addition, subtraction, gender identity, okay, wait, what? And then they go back and they're like, what are you guys teaching them? And they're like, well, you guys left us in charge. So part of it, I think, is, okay, we've got to admit, we dropped the ball. Now we need to go back and say, all right, whenever there's the little thing in the mail that says, hey, vote for the new school superintendent or whatever, don't throw it away. Do your research, figure out who it is, what needs to happen, and then go down there and make sure that your voice is heard because they're doing it.
Yeah, well, right. The issue in the American church is that we're afraid of persecution. We don't even self-persecute besides maybe a few different denominations which will go on fast together. They actually take their faith seriously. They know that there's a military sort of discipline associated with progressing the kingdom. And this is by no means violent. It has everything to do with being disciplined and completely committed. And so the fear is what influences the parent because they don't want persecution. You're going to have to be persecuted. You will be persecuted as a good parent. There's no other option here and now. People will look down on you. You will lose job opportunities. Your friends will leave you. You will alienate yourself because you're not going along with the natural They're trying to alienate natural things. They're trying to alienate the biology of human beings. You can't play in that game in a rational way. You will lose because the minute you engage, it's cognitive dissonance. You're trying to talk a schizophrenic out of their own schizophrenic tendencies. You're going to lose. There's no way to win. Aside from being able to make the right choices for you and your family. The church starts in the family. The church starts with a man that's in submission to Christ, that is actively pursuing Christ and being the forerunner in his family with what it means to be self-persecute, illustrating to his family every day what it means to have a relationship with Christ, and not in the sugar-coated church sort of Protestant thing that we get nowadays. It's not in the over-emotional prosperity. It's completely different. It's more austere. It seems austere to us, but it's a more vital form of worship. So the families are obviously getting torn apart because the real prerogative of the state, the agenda of any totalitarian government ever, is to get control of the kids. Because if you get control of the kids, every preceding generation will be mush in your hands.
Control
You
the
have
future.
total control over the future, where that money goes. You can indoctrinate. And we know that it doesn't last forever. Like, look at Nazi Germany or Soviet Russia. That will not work. And thank God for that, because Christ has embedded in the Bible and in his church a self-correcting mechanism. But it's up to us if we're going to let it get so bad to where that has to happen, where you have to have revolutions, where you have to have deaths and blood and all this horrible stuff happen because you weren't willing to make the first move to get persecuted by losing friends, by sending your kid to a different school, by not enjoying all of the luxuries we here in the United States take for granted. We have not identified in our faith in the persecution element. We have not found worship in the persecution element. We are too enthralled with the sensuality, which Paul warns about again, over and over again. The sensuality is going to be the downfall of the church, and the false teachers in it that are promulgating a lavish lifestyle and persecution. What are you getting persecuted with in a lavish lifestyle? Your Amazon package didn't come on the day it was supposed to? Like, get real here.
I think it stems a lot from complacency, too, because like you said, with the school board, that kind of stuff, like, for so long, that wasn't really a problem. It's like the schools are just teaching kids, like, your basic stuff. You didn't have to really worry about this problem, so no one really cared about the school boards. No one cared about these issues we have to care about now. And so I think we just got complacent.
Well, kids, young adults, I don't know, I think it was Churchill who said, like, if you're not idealistic in your 20s and then turn conservative, then something's wrong with you, basically.
You have no heart, you have no head.
You have no heart, you have no head. So we, as a species, can anticipate the changes that kids will go through. And so the totalitarian regimes, they will also make use of that. So if my kid, that's why in the 50s and the 60s, that whole red fear that was overcoming the nation was real. They got into the institutions that teach our kids, and they made the most important lesson socialism and communism, which in effect dehumanized the kids' idea of rationality and truth. Because what the communists what I think they teach kids, and I didn't know this for a while, is there's a difference between rationality and intelligence.
Reason.
There's a difference between reason and intelligence. Reason says this is a problem worth solving. Intelligence says I'll just solve it. It's just going forward. There are some problems that you have to teach your kid that he will face. So when you're in your 20s, you will be idealistic. You will see the fearsome horrors in this world, and you will want to correct it, and you will do what every generation prior to you thought they could do. Make everything equal for everybody, and you will fail because you have not realized the human condition, because you have not come into the faith far enough to realize the implications of the spiritual battle that will not go away until certain things are fulfilled. So you need to do your job. And then you become conservative because you realize that preserving values in a country like ours, freedom is defined by a set of rules. You don't have freedom in chaos. That subjugates your freedom. If you have freedom, you have rules that are defined that allow you to raise good kids.
As Jocko says, discipline equals freedom, right?
Exactly.
So I think there's
Zach, I was going to ask you.
Go ahead.
So actually, Dave, you want to pull up that comment from JR? I think that's a good transition because he was saying public school is designed to usurp the family authority. Christians need to think long and hard about homeschooling. And that was kind of my next thought. What do you plan on doing? Like, I think everyone's talking about homeschooling lately because of this stuff going on. What are your thoughts?
So my idea that I'm still kind of, it's still in the oven, still being worked over, is that I would have the children homeschooled, but not the typical homeschool where, like, mom gets sent like a curriculum once a week or once a month, and then she kind of like tries to walk the kids through it, and they go to this like facility that kind of brushes up on everything. My idea would be this. I'm saving up right now, working a pretty good job right now, trying to get the money needed to where I can hire personally a teacher, tutor, like they did back in the olden days, to come to the house and teach certain subjects to my children, like directly, right there. Obviously, if there's an age gap, maybe 8 o'clock to this time, he's teaching this one math, and then he's teaching this one science. And then maybe on Wednesdays and Thursdays, we've got a history and English teacher that comes in, you know? And so to where it's literally a private education where they're teaching your children. And guess what? They're not having to sit there for 8 hours. They're learning their subject like you would in college. They're learning it. It's sinking in. They're getting it right then and there for a couple hours. Then they can go play. They can go do sports. They can go outside and they can do whatever they want to do because my wife's going to be here with them. And so I think that's the idea that I would like to take. Another practical idea that a friend of mine brought to my attention was what you do is you live close to families that think like you, that have the same values and ideas, and you guys put your money together to really be able to pay a pretty penny for one of those, like a college professor that has your ideas and your thought process and your values and morals to teach the kids history. And then another one to teach the kids this, to where they can literally, that professor or teacher can live off of that, put all their effort into those children, those 10 kids in whatever environment you want them to be in. And you know, the parents are teaching the kids the same thing. The teacher is teaching them the same thing. They're growing up together and they don't have to worry about this, ideology being pushed into them. The other thing that I don't trust other parents with their kids. It's like if I take, my wife has a little dog. I take that dog to the dog park and there's a guy with a pit bull that's not trained, that's just running around. He could kill my dog. You know, in the same way, there's parents that leave their kids home with video games and Twitch and whatever the thing is called, and YouTube and all these other things that they're watching, never around any other kids, grow weird and isolated and emo. And then they, let me leave you in the house with a gun too. And that kid goes, shoots up the school. And I know these schools had parents probably like you guys and me. It's like, I didn't expect these parents to let their kid go on a rampage and so I don't trust the other parents either.
Yeah, a lot of parents today, I think, they also just don't discipline their kids in the way it used to be. I know my sister, they recently took their kids out of the public school and put them in a private one. And part of that was like the kids were so awful in the public school. There's just like no discipline in these kids. The teachers really can't even keep them under control. And it's just like a different world as far as the kids just kind of run the show.
Need some John Wayne in there. Need some John Wayne kicking kids' asses. Needs to happen, man.
Even then, like I said, I've spoken with private school principals, and they've even said that the parents have the mindset of, you raise my kid. You do it. And so the problem is that no one is raising the kids.
Well, how much?
I think the biggest problem is that the Christian families are not valuing the kids appropriately. They're God's. God has given you his kid, and you're responsible for his kid. They're not your kid; they're God's kid, ultimately. And you, or not you, but like the American public in general, who declare themselves Christian, they cop out. I can't afford public school. I can't afford. There's no organization. Therefore, the fact that I can feed my kid and make sure he has an iPad, that's good enough. It boils back down to the self-persecution of being able to say, I will do this no matter what. Like a guy who's given battle orders, it's like, yo, you're taking your platoon into here. And the guy's like, I have all these problems. I'm going to tell you why it's a hard decision and why we maybe shouldn't do this. Instead of that, he says, I will do it. God knows it's hard for us to put the kids first. But you know what? It's way easier for us to do that here in the West than it is for some poor family who's starving to death in Africa. Yep. So it's just a cop-out, you know, because you should be obsessed with what your kid is absorbing, because you're going to have to answer to God for him. You're going to have to answer to God for all of those things you did. And so if you're not taking that seriously, then you're copping out. And that's why it's an excuse, because it got this way, because it's like, well,
how much of this has stemmed from like the two parents working? Like
to cop out again.
Forever though, like at least
keeping up with the Joneses. Why do you have to have two parents?
Well, exactly, and that's the point.
Is your kid getting fed? Does he have a place to sleep? If you make a kid who can go into school with old shoes, hand-me-down shirts, and feel dignified and proud that he's part of a family that has values, then you're succeeding as a parent. If your kid can't strap on these things and be like, oh, now I feel like I'm worse as a person. I feel all these eyes on me. That's a weak kid. Well, obviously that child is not identifying himself in Christ.
Exactly.
He's identifying himself by what we have now, which is this material desire, which is just fueling, especially us in America. You are valued on your status within what you have materially so often. So it's the shoes you're wearing, if you had a CD player or not, or an iPhone. Kids are getting phones when they're like in the pre-fetal. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
They're not identifying as Christians. They're not identifying as sons and daughters of Christ because the family isn't oriented under Christ. The father isn't being a father. He's not oriented under Christ. The wife isn't being a wife. She's not submitting to the husband. And the kids, they're just floating around, and they're just going to get, most of the time, this is going to be mom and dad.
Yeah. Well, what percentage of them even have both parents at home? That's the point today.
Less and less.
I think I want to go back to the point you made about like the iPad and just being able to sacrifice some of those things. When it comes to raising a child, like I'm still in the race, so I can't stand when people say, "Hey, I figured it out. I've got a 5-year-old that's really good." It's like, no, I want to learn from the person that's raised a successful adult, not someone who's still, they've got middle school kids with blue hair, something like that, right? But the thing that I kind of thought about to myself was, okay, my son came into this world knowing nothing except I need to eat, I need to drink, I need to sleep, and that's it. He doesn't understand that he needs an iPad. He doesn't understand that he needs toys. He doesn't understand that he needs all these outfits. And so, sometimes I have to talk to my wife about this, and she's great. She's on board, and she agrees. Like, we're not getting him an iPad. And sometimes I even had to tell people, like, don't buy him any more toys. He's got enough toys. Because I see kids all the time that they constantly need something to entertain them. They need something to get their mind off of.
No different than the parents.
Yep.
No different than their
Work my
parents.
brain.
Dude, exactly.
Same thing the parents are doing. They're buying new cars or buying new junk and garbage. It's just like Fight Club to impress people that they don't care about. And
You're right.
The real problem here is with we're Christians. What is our greatest command? Okay, that's to love the Father and then our neighbors, right? And then Jesus goes and he says, "This is the Great Commission. Do as I did." This is the Great Commission.
Yeah.
And it is to take this metaphysical concept of what heaven is and co-create it on earth. Make people's lives better, all right? Make the lives of this world, the people that are living in this world, better. Co-create it with God. That's what he asked Adam to do in the beginning, and that's what Jesus is saying. Well, first of all, there's hungry people. Yeah, there's people that are naked out there. There's people that are possessed by demons. We have this, because we have massive mental crisis going on. There's so much depression. There's and there's so much drugs going on with people. They're not even in their right minds. We have a huge battle as Christians. We're missing out on what our purpose is. We have a defined purpose, and that is to usher in, be that conduit from this metaphysical, this dream, this concept of what heaven is, which Christ clearly outlines in the Great Commission, what we should be doing, what we should be concerned with, because the whole closed loop cycle of this materialistic, status-based reality that we've been living in is fed to us so we work more. So we spend more time at work buying this bullshit for our family and finding validation through this cycle so we work harder. So we're more mimetically inclined to the things around us. We don't have tribes, like you're saying, where it's like, yeah, my brother and I, we want to live close together. That's been our plan since we're going to start families together. We're going to be a tribe. Our kids are going to be with each other on Christmas, on the weekends. I'm going to know what my kid and who my kid's going to be with. They're going to feel pride in that. They're going to be like, you are a creation. You are a son of God. This is our mission in the world. This is how we roll. This is how we work in this world. We're not like everybody else. We love these people. We have to have understanding for them. You explain this. Like, going to a public school and having your kids come back is an opportunity to get them to find reason, to use reason, past rationale, to understand how to become a player in this world. You don't understand that. You can't just hide them from the world
and just let them
Sissies.
become this like this little princess. They can't take battle that way. They can't, but you have to be hands-on. You have to sacrifice the car. They have to sacrifice the money, the pleasures, the sensibility, the materialistic desire, this mimetic desire that's eating away at the Great Commission, at ushering heaven in, which is what our true purpose is. It feels way better when you know that purpose is a legacy, not some piece of trash you're going to get rid of for the next 2.0.
I mean, think about the beginning of the United States. You have this big dick in the room, England, and it's like, I'm telling you what to do. And it took the the persecution that those people decided to go up against England. Everybody in the world was like, these people are unhinged. They're insane. You will lose. You will lose. This is the greatest empire, and you're a nothing. What are you doing? But it was the truth being on their side. And this is what people forget all the time, being a Christian, being a person of truth, is it doesn't matter what you're facing. Because you have the truth on your side, you will prevail. So if your kid sees you going to work with old clothes, a beat-up car, whatever, but he sees the solid diamond-like structure of your manhood, you're going to be the guy he respects. He's going to see the cheap cars and all that social posturing, chintzy garbage, and he'll be able to pick that out of 10. And he'll be able to self-identify in the diamond structure of truth that we're given as believers. And we sell out and we cop out because we're unwilling to deal with the social anxiety of being a proper Christian.
Yeah.
You will be persecuted. You're supposed to be happy when you're persecuted. You're supposed to see that as going through it with Christ, dragging your cross. This is not an abstraction, guys. This is not an abstract feature of your life. This is real. You have splinters in your back. You have calluses on your soles. You're bleeding and dying for what you believe in. That's the way the diamonds are made. And so that's what kids respond to. If it wasn't what kids respond to, then you would have more of these kids who change their sex being happy into their 20s and 30s, but they're not. They're unhappy. They feel like they've been led astray. They have no idea what they've been done evil is what they've been done evil to them.
Gender and the racism. It's all about who is the oppressed one.
So I think two things. I'll start off with this. I think you two should definitely marry another set of twins. So then your kids will be like siblings.
Yes, that was the plan when we were kids, though. 100%.
Okay. Well, okay. So
that would be awesome.
That would finding a needle in like the proverb, like a haystack the size of Texas, but it would have been nice.
Would have loved that. I love you, Zach, for that.
So the other thing that I want to point on about, like, when you talk about the issue with the parents, I don't think it's necessarily just hey, I want my kid to fit in with the other kids. I definitely think that's part of it. But I think a lot of it is laziness. A lot of it is it literally takes effort to keep my son entertained, to teach him how to walk and crawl and play. He doesn't know how to do any of that. It takes dad to teach him how to do these things. You know, sometimes when dad's at work and mom's here, sometimes it takes mom to miss, you know, she can't watch, she doesn't have time to watch Oprah and all this other kind of stuff. She's taking care of him. So what a lot of parents do is they've been given a shortcut. Hey, just give him this. He'll be good for, it's only for 5 minutes. Just smoke one. You'll be fine. It's only one. And then now the kid's hooked. And now you're hooked to having that much free time away from your child. And it's addictive. And it's a trap. And I think, which leads me to my next point, is I think that when we talk about this whole woke movement, when we talk about all these things, it's important for us to distinguish between those who have been lied to and are really looking for the best idea, and the only idea they've been given is this idea. And so they're just making what they think is the rational decision, versus the people who have been given this idea and just reject it because. And it kind of reminds me of the parable of the wheat and the thorns, or
the tares, the wheat and the tares.
Yeah, where it's like, hey, don't separate them now, because you may take up some of the good ones. Hey, you know what? I'm going to spare Sodom and Gomorrah if there's 10 righteous people, if there's this many people. God does not enjoy, first of all, he doesn't enjoy the perishing of the wicked, but definitely he will even sacrifice sometimes in the Bible the judgment of the wicked, because there's a couple righteous that he does not want to get involved in the mix. right? So that he doesn't want any innocent to be punished. And so obviously as Christians, we know literally there's no one that is righteous in God's eyes to his standard. But my point being is this. I think as Christians, when we go into this cultural warfare mentality, we need to, when we're having these discussions, distinguish between, is this person believing a bad idea and they've just never been presented with a Christian who has a mind and can actually do what Paul says, which is create a rationale and argument for why you believe what you believe? Or are they just rebelling just because, like, I hate that. I know what your worldview leads to, and I don't want that. I literally want this worldview. And there are people like that. And I think that's where it's important to distinguish.
Well, Christians, we love everybody. Yeah. That's that we hate the sin. We don't hate the person. We hate the sin.
Right.
And within hating the sin, you think about, what if someone had cancer? What if I see someone get slammed on the side of the street by a car and his leg is fractured, his femur is compounded right out of his leg? What am I going to do? I'm going to run to him and try to save his life because I care about it. I love him. It's not a battle. It's not a warfare of ideologies at that point in time. It's how can I serve this person? And most of the time when it comes to this type of stuff, because these guys and what's going on, and this is where I was going to kind of almost like disagree, because like no matter how much you tell them you love them and it's like it's okay, man, it's like I respect your desire to, you know, ram it in the wherever, and if you want to do that at home, fine, you know, that's okay, and I respect whatever, you know, you can go down that road forever. But at the end of the day, they're coming and they're trying to take your kids. They're trying to indoctrinate your family. They're trying to say this is the way it should be, you know, and that is not okay.
Well, in my opinion, go ahead.
I was gonna say, kind of like it's the whole cast your pearls before swine thing. Like the people that are living that lifestyle, really, they need Jesus before they're gonna figure out the moral side of it. But the real issue we obviously have is, like you said, they're like their lifestyle is invading our children's lives, and it's not only like. It's not just that they're living it, it's being pushed on them as like a normal, they're just trying to normalize a whole lifestyle that has never been normal and should really, frankly, never be normal. And, you know, that's where we're at right now.
I see something after coming across Renee Girard's work. The scapegoating thing has never been more profound for me, because the way that we engage these people is not in discussion. You're never going to move them in discussion at that point, because what's been born into them, what's in their DNA, is you hate them. So take control where the power is. Take control of your kids. Make sure that they don't do focus on you and your family and what you're doing there. That's it. That's where the power is. That's where the testimony of Christ is going to be, because it's scapegoating. What they do, what the Christians do in their fancy churches, is we're going to argue with these guys. We're going to scapegoat our responsibilities of taking care of our children and blame these people who are confused and ultimately need us to minister to them, to love them. We're going to scapegoat and call them the reason and cause for our error being leaders of our kids. It's a scapegoating mentality. It's
giving them the power.
Well, it's a cop-out. If you want to engage these people, you try and serve them. I love you. We're not going to talk about that because we're not going. But we could talk about other things. Let's not talk about the stuff that inflames us and causes distance. Let's be smart here. We'll talk about the stuff we agree with. We have differences. Let that lie. And I'm going to control my kids. You're going to be tolerant to this is America. Let's just abide by the rules now. And I'm going to control my kids, because that's the testimony we're missing in the church. Right. We don't want the persecution. So instead of the persecution, we scapegoat and blame the people who have no idea who God is. And we blame them for messing up our kids. Well, the truth is, they got messed up because you were interested in what was going on in the schools. You had a communist agenda in the universities, and this was a disease in the marrow of the bones of the United States. You can look back, if you look back at history,
it's a consequence.
It's not something that just manifested with Gen Z. This has been going on for a long time. Of course. And the kids aren't educated, so they're just, again, being kids. They're idealistic. Yeah. They're going to chew down, like Paul says, what's tickling their little ears, because they're kids. Right. And so they're going to go for the underdog. That's why the dialogue, I don't believe the dialogue is, I believe the dialogue is the scapegoating for Christians. I'm telling you.
Here's let me clarify what I mean by that. I don't mean let your kids go to these schools, let your kids like hang out and just yeah, hey, I love you. Let's talk about it while you teach my kid, how to dress in drag or something. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is this. If you're going to win the heart of a nation or the mind of a nation or the soul of a nation, you have to have discussions as well as the actions. So, for example, do everything you just said. I agree with that. The only thing that I disagree with is that everybody on the woke side is on that side because they just literally think you're the enemy and that's never going to change. I disagree with that because I think that they do not understand what we are standing for. For example, if I'm walking down a road and somebody says, "Hey, if you hit 65 south, Interstate 65 south, coming from let's say Georgia, you keep going south, you'll hit New York," and I never hear any other directions, I'm going to go south. Now, there are some people that will say, I heard directions, someone telling me to go north. They showed me a map and everything, and I'm still rejecting. But I don't think us as a church have done a good enough job proclaiming the evils of these things, proclaiming the problems with these things like how I guess an example like Vody Baucham or Jordan Peterson, or these people talk about the negative impacts of what happens. To me, I believe the worst thing that can happen to somebody is not for them to just go to hell, but for them to think they're getting into heaven and then they go to hell.
Yeah, I want to say this. So I do agree that these people can change. I have hope for them, and I do believe that this is the thing. Like, you remember Christ when he's handed over to the ruling religious class, and they are throwing accusations at him, right? Mm-hmm. You are talking about two opposing parties. Everything's already been said. Christ has said everything he has to say. They will continue talking until his work is done. The dialogue has already been said. And I do think that some people haven't heard it. It's because they're not looking for it. But there is an agency in us being quiet and carrying out our duty. It's what it does to the mind of the person who thinks that we hate them is they see this person's not engaging on this because they're smart enough to know the outcome. They're not going to spin wheels here. If it was a fresh debate, I would say yes. But it's been the banner going across the news, and everybody's obsessed with this because of the caustic, pernicious, the human need to engage drama. And so when Christ was quiet, he could have said anything he wanted to the Pharisees. I mean, everybody was standing around. Just like he'd done so many times before, he could have said, well, here's what's going on, guys. Here's where you're wrong. He did that. He was quiet on purpose. Because ultimately the testimony was in his quietness.
Right. But
because
the church does not stand up when it should.
I totally agree. I totally agree.
Way too often.
But I do
There's
think
a
that
double standard within what they think actually love is.
But the segment of the church that is speaking out is scapegoating on it.
Agreed.
That's where I'm saying, because I mean, there's a way to speak out. There's a balanced approach to it where you don't get fixated on it. You realize there's a hierarchy of problems, and this is not the biggest one, and you deal with it appropriately because you're showing you're not addicted to drama.
Well, I think there's context.
Nazi Germany did the same thing. The Catholic Church waited so long because Hitler was saying all the right things. He was such a manipulative mastermind that they did not take action in the way of saying this social institution is really a totalitarian. They didn't say that. It was too late in the game. So
I would argue, as someone who does go to a Catholic church,
I love the Catholics. Love the Catholics.
Okay, cool. I would argue that was a little bit of cowardice. Personally, I can't say anyone's intention. So maybe it was just wisdom beyond my understanding. But to me, I think the reason churches stay silent is because they're afraid of getting canceled. Yeah. I agree with you 100% that that actions speak louder than words. I agree that if you're going into something because you're addicted to drama, that's the wrong reasons. But I do think that if you have a generation that only hears one side of things,
No, that's
that's dangerous. Because I'll give you an example. A few weeks ago, I was down in Florida, and I was talking to a guy who's atheist or Satanist or whatever. It's kind of the same thing, really, because I don't think they really believe in a God. But we were talking, and I said he was just very anti-Christian. I was like, you have a lot of things to say about Christianity. What is the worldview? What is like the basic premise of Christianity? And it was, well, you do this, and then you do this, and then you get this reward, or you don't get this reward. And the Bible, the Satanic Bible says some good things too. And I said, well, you don't even know what our view is, and you're disagreeing with us. So you've got at least, no one's ever told you what it is, or you've never had the ears to listen. Maybe God didn't open your ears to listen, or maybe you didn't open them to listen. But I think that the problem is, and I have Christians, other believers that disagree with me on this, and they think we just got to show them with our actions. And I'm like, that's good, but I see a problem with the talkers and just these silent action people. I think that Paul went in debating, and I think that if they've never heard any better ideas, that's a problem. And so that's the only weakness I see that's the only downfall I see in that, is you have a whole generation of people that say,
So you have to first identify, like Ravi Zacharias was really good about this. He said, don't answer the questioner, or don't answer the question, answer the questioner. So you as a believer have to be smart about this, okay? If you're talking to a guy that's inflammatory, he wants blood, you can see that like this. You can tell him what you want to say, but you're not going to change his mind, because what's right in his mind, he's made right in his heart. There's no affecting that.
Of course.
If you have somebody in your presence that wants to have a conversation, by all means, have the conversation. Have the conversation. Enjoy that conversation, and pour your heart out to that person. Give them love. It's both. It's not one or the other. But what I am saying is that the parents, because we're talking about parents here, and ultimately the reason why the United States is suffering so much is because of lack of family.
Proper hierarchy within a Christian family.
Morals and ethics that are derived from the bedrock of Christianity. This is what causes communities to flourish. Why? Is because the kids aren't being put first. So this is where I think about the hierarchy of time. If I have a kid, hopefully God willing I will, and I have people that want to talk about this, that are designing a dialogue that is going to fail, you as a man have to recognize that and not engage. If it's a person that is open, you use the spiritual discernment, you engage. I have to look after my kid first. And I think that a lot of the churches, like the Episcopalian Church, the way that they've been very embracing of the LGBT, whatever, the alphabet now, those guys are making a huge error, right? They're not willing to be persecuted. They're letting culture influence them. But when that whole beer thing went off, and Budweiser was down in sales, it told me something, that we have a great majority of people here in the United States that have a belief on this issue that, like you said, it's not that it's not being spoken, because all these people know it. It's not being presented in the media outlets. It's like this whole issue that Andrew Tate talks about, the psyopsing and the Matrix and all this. It's like, dude, there's not that many people out there with that kind of an idea.
It's reached a threshold when Target's getting boycotted, Anheuser-Busch. I mean, these
but you also got to look at like what's the demographic that's drinking that beer. You attacked literally so you didn't
the most conservative people in the country.
Yeah. So, but I kind of view it as a couple different like context things. Like there's these one-on-one conversations you're talking about, if they're fruitful or not.
Yeah.
But then there's also like Christian. Like I feel like definitely our job is to take on fellow Christians that are accepting of these ideas. Like I think we have that's 100% like
it's not
they
biblical.
They need to be called out. They need to be debated. They need to be handled. And then there's engaging debate with like if you're gonna have like a public debate with someone that's not a Christian, you got to remember you're going into that not to change that person's mind.
Exactly.
You're not like, they need to find Jesus first, but you have an
Oh, of
audience
course.
that,
What you can do is focus on your family
and that audience,
and you.
well,
and
yeah,
That's how you
yourself,
change the
and like
tide.
let them be but also just draw that boundary of like, this is a free country. We have a constitution. There's a freedom of speech here. Okay, this is why this country. This is the fundamentals of freedom. Okay, your intolerance towards my intolerance, all right, is acceptable. If I don't want to be tolerant to what your sex is and the way that you want to be, that's my right. Okay, I can't. That's okay. We don't have to agree on everything in this world.
But to continue on, like, as far as potentially our roles, like, there's definitely a difference in role. Like, if you are a family man at the moment, like, you have to focus on your family. But like, I think overall the Christian community, guys like us, having podcasts stuff, we need to be pumping out content online, using, combating these ideas. So like, there's not just one message being out there.
Agreed.
And
You can't sit by.
especially like these teenage kids, they spend so much time, like as we were talking about, on iPads and phones watching videos. We need them finding our stuff and similar ideas, not just only having access to Dylan Mulvaney crap.
Well, they don't, and I think that's what we're trying to do. I
You
by
gotta
no
dig.
means am saying
You gotta dig for something.
I'm by no means am saying be a silent, arbitrator of truth. You have to speak out, but it's a measure of balance within that. So the people that are speaking out need to be reciprocating on their action, and the people who aren't speaking out are generally not doing any of the silent testimonial stuff anyway. They're not doing anything.
Well, the idea is like a lot of the Christians get caught up in when you do go head to head with, say, like a transgender, and they're saying, okay, this is normal. It's like, no, that's not normal. Okay, it's never been normal. It's something that is available to you because of the technology of this day and age and the identity crisis that's going on. But let's define terms. That has never been normal. It's not normal for you to change your sex. It never has been normal. And to make a word like normal to a kid and say this is normal, that's a problem for me.
Yeah.
I don't care what you believe. If you want to go chop your tits off and reverse your dick, go ahead. But don't tell my kids that that's normal, because it's not normal.
Well, and that's the indoctrination part, and maybe that's a good we're an hour 12 minutes in. Maybe that's a good transition point to this next video. What do you guys think?
Oh, baby.
Let's do it. This is a firecracker.
Dave, you can pull it up. So the context of this video, we got tagged in it. This drag queen made a video hammering at
So scary.
Christianity. You'll get the picture of it here pretty quick. So
You'll get this one, Zach.
Go ahead and play that.
Let me tell you who is indoctrinating the children. The religions that tell them that they're born sinners and need to work their whole lives to be forgiven. You think they can understand that? Teaching them that certain people are evil and going to burn in hell for all eternity. So if those kids feel that that's who they are on the inside, they can never show who they really are and end up tormented their whole lives. Teaching them to hate others that aren't like them or aren't living the way you think they should. Meanwhile, many kids are being abused by church leaders that have gained power over them, instilling fear in the kids so they won't tell the terrible secret. And don't get me started on the Bible being appropriate for children. Yes, I've read it, and it's definitely for adults only. The things that happen in there? Oof. No wonder it was just banned at a school district in Utah. There is actual evidence and statistics of abuse in churches, and most abusers of children are cis heterosexual men. You know who we don't hear about being arrested for child abuse? Drag queens. So yes, by all means, let's protect the kids. Leave the church out of the children's lives. Don't let them go there until they're 18. Can you imagine how many thousands and thousands would be saved from abuse and lifelong trauma? And since you're so concerned about children being too young to make choices or understand things such as a kid having two dads, like Jesus, let them decide at 18 if they want to pursue a life of faith or religion instead of indoctrinating them into it. And that's the tea. So, you think drag performers are...
Well,
So-
Zach, what's your take on that?
Well, first, this kind of points to my problem that I have is this guy has obviously never read the Bible. He said he's read it, but he hasn't. If he said, well, the Bible teaches that you know, bad people go to hell and good people go to heaven, and no. It teaches that we are all fallen, and God reached his hand down and said, "Hey, grab on." And you can
giant
grab on
straw
if you wanna
man,
grab on.
basically.
And yeah, and so that's wrong. First of all. Secondly, here's the other thing that I have a problem with the people on this side of the argument say is they talk about church people that do bad things.
Yeah.
First of all, why do they say they're bad things? According to what standard of theirs is it bad? Secondly, if you were to take the statistics of people in church that do that versus people that don't go to church and do that, people that don't go to church would be way higher. Nobody is claiming in Christianity that we don't have people that will do bad things, that Christians don't sin. No one's claiming that. We're claiming we do sin. We realize there is sin. We realize we're sick. We go to the doctor to try to heal us. The person in the world that's non-religious, how can they even define bad things? And that's the other thing I get to is abuse and bad things. How is it not age appropriate? How is anything age appropriate or not age appropriate? According to what standard does this guy have? If he's not any part of any religion, and if you don't believe there's a God, you just believe that all we are is matter and energy. There's matter and energy. That's not what should or could or what should happen. It's what is. There is no good or bad or evil or anything. So someone who's not religious everything just happens. There's no right or wrong. So I have a problem when people on that side try to remove God, but keep the moral foundations that God built. Say, no,
borrowing
okay,
theism.
okay, you built this foundation, but I'm going to pretend you didn't exist, but I'm going to still pretend this moral foundation exists. It makes no sense.
Yeah, when your plumbing goes out, it's nice to know that the actual plumber plumbed your house and can call them to fix your plumbing. Otherwise, you're just, what are you going to do? No one made it? Okay, we're stuck here with, But a couple things that I had a problem with is just the way that he strawmanned Christianity. Number one, in the beginning, when he talks about hell, like there's these kids that have this sin and there's these bad, evil people that are going to hell. And it just totally is like, that's the reason why we love people. And these decisions in life, they lead to a hell right here, right now. It's not like it just happens down the road. This is the way that happens day to day here on earth. And he goes on to say we hate. And it's like, there's no hating of people within Christian. We hate sin. Sin is something that we do hate. It's evil. It's pure evil. It's a road to death. You follow the sin, you end up in hell. You end up dead. Okay, we hate that road. But we don't hate people at all. This is the most valuable thing to God is human beings, is souls. That is the most valuable currency in this world. And every Christian understands that. The most valuable thing in this world are human beings. That is the most valuable thing.
And that's unique to having to have God. Like, humans don't matter if God doesn't exist. So, if, like, and I had written down kind of off that is, like, separating, like, the message of Christianity, Christ's message, versus, like, quote, bad Christians. Like, he's just referring, like, if you just characterize all Christianity as some, Catholic priests molesting children, or
it's a pejorative.
Yeah, you just, like, it's cherry picking the negative side and then labeling the whole religion as that. And, that's just a giant straw man.
Well, I mean, think about the culture that we're in. Hollywood is inoculating kids with values and entertaining them. There's more pedophiles in there than you will find anywhere. Look at the government. Same thing. You got Epstein Island.
Yep.
I mean, let's be honest here. If you want to castigate and make a pejorative about the church, about pedophiles, why not invoke the rest of the world? It's just this picking and choosing and not holding yourself accountable. The real mark of a man is holding himself accountable and being able to say, I messed up, or I did. That's repentance, that's humility. It's the bedrock of how we begin our journey into grace, is by saying, yeah, I definitely have issues. And in a world where nobody has issues, good luck communicating with anybody. Good luck connecting with anybody. Good luck trying to have a heart-to-heart with anybody where nobody has issues.
And here's this guy.
Everybody's just fine the way they are.
Here's this guy who's obviously on board. I mean, I'm making an assumption by saying this, but I imagine he's on board with the LGBTQ, indoctrinating Pride Month, and they have to put up, rainbows in school, and it's all over everything. You go to the store, it's everywhere. Okay, they're indoctrinating kids as to their sexuality from birth. And here he is saying at 18 you should be able to decide what religion that you want to do. And that's that hypocrisy and their double standard within what they're selling and what they're seeing the other people are selling, and they're like, whoa, that's not okay, but what I'm doing is okay. It's just intolerance. This tolerance to intolerance. It's the same thing that's going on with
Well, it's like
double standard. It's ridiculous.
One is indoctrination, one's not. And it's like ultimately a child is being indoctrinated one way or another. 100%. It's either by the state, it's by the alphabet people, it's by the school, or it's by the parents. Like it's all some form of indoctrination.
I think the main point is they act like you guys like you and I have a problem with indoctrination as if it's a bad thing. It's not if you indoctrinate them with good things. Like I'm going to indoctrinate my children, or the school will, like you said, or the world will. And I think, but the thing that rattles my brain, and this is what I think about, this is the thing that keeps me up at night, is wondering, like you said, that guy, is he driving south because he never heard anyone tell him what north is? Or does he know that? Like, is he making a straw man of Christianity, or does he really believe that's what the Bible says? And when he says, oh, I read the Bible, did he really read the Bible? Or did he read a verse here and there and then say, hey, I get the gist? And those are the people that I worry about the most because, I've got friends, I've got family. I know people who, I know some of them know where they're heading and they don't care, because they don't want that world to be that way. They don't like God's idea, God's plan. They've seen the blueprints. They don't like it. They're rejecting it. Then there's some people that literally, they saw, that's the blueprint. Okay, yeah, no, I think this person made a better argument. And it just, those are the people that I wonder.
You're talking about innocence. You're talking about innocence.
Yeah, is it
all
a
roads
lack
lead
of
to Rome for
knowledge?
them? That's the problem. It's all inclusive. All roads lead to Rome. And if you claim there is a specific road that you believe in personally, like we Christians do, it's a narrow path. That's
Right,
what I believe.
sure.
It's a narrow path. There's one road to heaven.
There's one way.
one road to life, and there's a bajillion roads to death, shitholesville. And if you want to go down any of those roads, fine. And it's obvious within their ideology that it doesn't matter what you do, doesn't matter what you are. You can all find your way to heaven. All you can find your way to Rome.
Yeah.
But what they're really saying is, if you don't agree with me, then that's not okay.
Yeah,
And I don't
'Cause
respect
essentially,
what you're saying.
If they really believed all roads led somewhere, then they would be cool with your road. And
They're
my
not
road.
trying to get to New York, bro. They're not trying to get to New York. They say they are, but they don't care where they land, so long as it's appropriate to the social structure of today.
Yeah.
And they're getting the head nods and the hearts and the likes on Facebook. That's all they care about.
There's something that stands out to me was David's prayer for his son Solomon. He said, I pray that my son will love God with his whole heart. And if you read the Old Testament, it comes up all the time. Worship with your whole heart. Love me with your whole heart. There's not enough full commitment in the church to God. If you were just to take a simple metric and say, how much of this worldly shit is being downloaded into my spirit and body compared to my reading and prayer every day, and see how that adds up, most will find that the worldly download is vastly dominating the spiritual download. So are you loving God with your whole heart? Because you're talking about innocence. There's people out there who are innocent, and I believe in a God that is fair and a God that loves all. So everybody will have the opportunity in life to accept him, and we need to be agents of that as instruments of God, providing those people to our doom and gloom. That's the whole issue here, and it starts with your kids. So don't go looking for a homeless guy in New York when your kids aren't being taken care of. Just stop being that person, because you're scapegoating on your responsibilities.
Exactly.
Do your responsibilities and give your whole God to heart. And you'll notice the jobs you're given, they're not as interesting. They're not as fun. The world will not hail you as a Messiah. You're not going to get the accolades and the praise that you wish you were getting. And it's a good thing, because that's going to annihilate your carnal person.
Desire.
Right.
And that's when you worship with your whole heart. And I love that, because David could have been like, I pray that my son will be a good king, or will acknowledge the Lord. And there's so many Christians who do love God, or who acknowledge the Lord, who have the blueprint, but their whole heart is not invested. And it's a scary and fearsome thing. But by doing the whole heart exchange, you get vigor for life, you have vitality in your spirit, and you actually are alive because you have the fulfillment of the Holy Spirit inside of you, because you're engaging the battle as you were intended to do.
And that's the light people see.
That's the light people see, right? Because
That's what they're attracted to.
Truth is, it's the most attractive
That's what
thing.
attracts people
Yeah.
to it.
Yep.
That's what attracts them to it.
Yeah, and I guess let's bring it back to something we've spoken about before, right? Like dating. Okay? How much truth do you think how much truth do you think the church has brought in young men when it comes to the truth and reality of dating?
Jack,
Next to none.
poop.
Exactly. And so in that same way, what do guys do? They do the only thing they've heard, which is a lot of Disney Channel stuff. And then they find out, wait, it doesn't work. And then they're in their 20s and 30s, coming across Andrew Tate and Fresh and Fit, but then they trickle down to, you guys or Me and C Love maybe, and they get like a more
Muslims?
accurate, Muslims. And then they get more of a, they get a realistic, holistic view. And I think that the church dropped the ball. In the same way, I don't think that the church does a good job explaining their reasons why. I think they do a good job of saying, I think the majority say, you know what, that's really a hard conversation to have. And I just, I think God would just, we'll just let God figure it out. Let's just not talk about it. It's like,
God take
like,
the wheel.
Yeah, it's
Right
like,
off the
yeah, and
cliff,
it's like,
baby.
it's like, imagine if you had, I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on Jordan Peterson.
Love
But
him.
Imagine if you had somebody like a Jordan Peterson that was like a pastor, and he took the word and he stood on the word. But then when people come at him with questions, he has the wisdom to apply it to real life and say, this leads here, not just because of spirit, not just spiritually, but the spiritual and physical are intertwined. This leads here physically. This leads to a bad society. This leads to this. This leads to that. And you don't see churches doing that. You just see churches
And
saying,
you don't teach them.
well,
You
I
don't see
be-
them
I
saying,
just
"This is why
believe-"
we're different." Like this is why the
Right.
Christian religion is different from all the mythology,
Right.
because they're not studying the mythology, not studying all this other stuff. That they're going to help. That's why Jordan Peterson answers the questions like a beast, because he's got the knowledge. He has the mythology. He understands the stories, the concepts, the symbolism behind what's going on. He's able to
Robbie.
attack.
Yeah.
Exactly. He's not just coming from this TED Talk Christian seminary garbage of I'm going to make you feel better for Monday.
I would actually even argue that the church doesn't just ignore that, like say the dating topic. They preach the Disney side of it pretty much.
Yeah.
They actually
yeah.
push that narrative more. Kind of like the happy wife, happy life thing. That's totally pushed in the Christian community,
It's the way to
and it's like the
wanna die.
foundation to it.
Oh yeah,
Sewage slide.
sewage slide. Yeah.
And I think Vody Baucham does a good job. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him.
No.
Are you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a big black dude, big beard.
Yeah. Played college football at
Yep.
I think Rice or something. But anyway,
He's
yeah.
a beast.
He does a good job explaining. He studies the opposite team's film.
Mm.
To put it in football terms. He studies their film and he realizes all the holes in their argument. And he says, yeah, mine definitely doesn't have those holes. And so when that person comes to him like, Vody, this idea seems really good. What do you think? He can point at all the holes and say, look, there's a trap here, it's a trap here, it's a trap here. What we tend to do, we have done as the church in the West, at least, that I've come across, is we'll say, oh, just trust God to take care of it. It's like, whoa, why did you study your film? Like, remember when Paul went into that town and was like, there's that God you guys don't know about. That's the real God. And he really broke down why this doesn't make sense and this doesn't make sense, and we don't have that. And I think that we've gotten to a point where we want to make sure everyone comes back, so we stay away from certain topics. We also, but then I think part of it is they haven't studied their film, so they're afraid. They don't know the answer, and they think, "Oh man, I really don't know how to come back."
They don't.
Yeah, well,
it's
I
a
think
cop out.
a
It's
lot of
straight up cop out,
yeah,
dude.
And
It's
bringing up Jordan Peterson with what he's able to do is bring the abstraction of Christ into a scientific, biological representation that makes sense just because your life will be better, right? If I employ the way that he makes an archetype of Christ, and it shouldn't stay there. That's where the church has it prioritizes Christ as an incarnation, not an abstraction.
Right.
But what happens in the church is they can't engage the secular audience because they're not speaking the same language. When Paul went up to the Corinthians, he quoted Dionysus. He quoted the language that they were familiar with to ramify and qualify the gospel. And Jordan Peterson is great at that. The reason why his biblical series are so popular among the secular is because and Jonathan Pageau in tandem with him, is bringing the symbolism of life to the forefront, because these people spoke a different language. And in order to interpret it, your subjective response mechanism to downloading data has to be brought into that place. And he's great at creating parallels with secular science, with all the other mythologies. He doesn't, like you were saying, he doesn't push these things out, because if I study Greek mythology, or I study secular medicine, or I study secular clinical psychology, I'm going to be sort of secularizing myself because I'm not studying the Bible. No, you shouldn't be doing that. You need to speak the language of these people. You need to reconcile that as information and tools so that you can reach the innocent in this world. Because if you are so complacent, like let Jesus take the wheel, you've forgotten that submission to Christ is not a complacent gesture. It is one of the hardest things that employ every bit of your spiritual membrane, your cells in your body to do. And it's something that requires study. If you have a Muslim friend and you're trying to minister him, my brother, he did this with our sister. She became a Muslim. He read the Quran. That love that you express for the person who you're trying to communicate with has to manifest in understanding them, like voodoo.
You know what's interesting? You know what that reminds me of?
Yeah.
That quote. It's a quote, and I'm going to butcher the shit out of this, but it's basic. It goes like this: the moment you understand your enemy is the moment you love them, and the moment you destroy them, pretty much. And it goes to say, it's like, once you actually understand somebody, you're going to love them because they're God's creation. You're going to see that there's some beauty there. And that also gives you the ability to finally bring truth in, and that's when the sin gets destroyed.
Well, I view that part of our responsibility, like to become knowledgeable, to have the wisdom to have these conversations. Like you got to know, you got to be able to steel man your opponent's argument, I think, to truly be able to have that discussion with them. If you don't know where they're coming from or the arguments that they have, like you're going to be just fighting blind with the conversation.
For them either.
Yeah. You should be able, like, that's the one thing that I love so much about apologetics is I've learned, like, I pretty much know every atheist argument that's going to come at me. And I think most people will once you study that. And that just helps you, A, you respect their position, and B, you know you have the response to their position.
Yeah, but like if you're just beginning, like in your faith, don't listen to Christopher Hitchens tear apart, theologians. Don't do that. You need to integrate yourself into this apologetics and learn appropriately. Start with getting the gospel under your fingertips, like in your heart and the tip of your tongue. Because so many Christians, I didn't get a chance to get into the videos, but I saw you had a sort of playlist where you were asking people in the church, what is the gospel?
Oh, yeah.
How did that go? Because I didn't get a chance to see it. But I thought it was a great idea, especially to expose some of this.
John's actually brought up that idea before.
Yeah, I thought it would be a great idea. So
yeah,
I
I don't know if you guys want to play it right here or not, but no,
you could. Dave,
could?
Is it on the YouTube or on Instagram?
It's on YouTube. There's a short one on Instagram though, but the full one is on YouTube. But you don't have to pull it up if it's not right there. I can just summarize it. So basically, we went around to different denominations within my city, and we just asked churchgoers, when they were coming out, hey, based on your understanding of the church and Christianity, the Bible, what is the gospel? We wanted to see if there was any discrepancy among different denominations, different churches, and just in general. And so we went, and I was a little surprised.
Hey, we got the video. If we, yeah, Dave, just open up a new tab here.
Oh, okay, cool.
We might as well bring it up a couple minutes.
Might as well.
But I thought it was so cool because I think beyond the innocence in the world that we need to provide the gospel for, it's waking up the church is the predominant issue that we need to face and find solutions for.
Yeah.
So here we go.
No, Dave, go back to.
Go, Dave.
So
Rusty Fuel, thank you so much for the super chat. Thank you. We appreciate you, brother. Yeah, Rusty Fuel. That's hilarious.
Modern Christians, including the leadership, is ridiculously uninformed and unread of their own scriptures.
Amen.
They can't even begin to understand their opponents or what's going on around them. Absolutely. They're absolutely chicken with their head cut off. They ain't got no balls. They can't lead their family. And there's this femininity that's taking over there. Everyone's soft. They're just letting God take the wheel right off the cliff.
Yeah. Here's the other thing that I would say to Christians, right? I think Christians have this idea that, like, if someone's an atheist, they must know something I don't know. It's like, if you really believe in what you believe, you know that they don't know what you know. And so I think that it comes from like a lack of true belief. So like I was saying last weekend, there was an atheist that I was talking with, and he kind of threw out his thing where he's like, yeah, I know Christians can't answer this one. And I asked him a question. I just said, I'm just going to ask you a very basic question. What do why don't you follow Christianity? What's your problem with religion in general? He said, because I'm a science guy. I go where the science leads. He said, science has proven time and time again it's right. I said, okay. I said, forget Christianity. You don't believe there's a God, right? He said, yeah, I'm my own God. To which I said,
nice.
I said, okay, how did the universe get here? And he said, well, the Big Bang. I said, okay. And I said, the majority of physicists believe that the Big Bang is where time, matter, and space all came into existence at the same time. What happened to cause that?
Happen?
What happened to cause that? And he said, well, nothing had to happen to cause it. And then I said, okay, science is based on the premise that there is always a cause and an effect. An effect always has a cause. If you throw that out the window, then the scientific method of observing things has to be thrown out the window too, because your brain could just be firing on its own. The reason that you see me and the reason you trust that your brain is seeing and hearing everything is because it's reacting to a stimulus outside of itself. That there is a cause causing the effect, which gives you vision, which gives you hearing, which gives you the sense of touch. All those things happen because there is a cause behind them. If you throw out the idea, if you literally put out the idea that, well, maybe there's a cause that happened there's an effect that happened without a cause, you're opening the door to undermining the whole foundation of science that you believe in.
Yeah, it's like the truth claim of there is no truth. It's like, well, hold on a second, buddy. You just made a truth claim. So there is truth. So you can't say that. It's like the time machine problem where the guy goes back. Have you the time machine movie? I love this. So he's like trying to save his wife because she gets shot. So he makes a time machine. He's like, I'm going to save her. And it never works. She always ends up dying. So he meets this like weird, messed up, futuristic humanoid of a person. And the guys explain it to him. He's like, you'll never be able to go back in time and save her because the reason why you made the time machine is because she died. So you cannot overcome that. So that's why you cannot overcome truth being exclusive, because when you try to do that, you in turn make truth exclusive. Yeah. You can't get away from it. Mm-hmm. You just can't. And I think what surprises me is, and this is where the truth, you get a pathos or a love for somebody. I remember when I was young, we had an uncle that was like, you could be so stubborn. Like you could be so stubborn And underneath that stubbornness is just a desire to be loved. You know, and they're fighting. They just want to be loved. And it's like, that atheist has thought about that. You know that he's had to deal with that. And somehow he's standing there taking the shitstorm right to his face. It's like, how desperate is that? You know, like, and that's what they're going through. That is their circumstance. That is their reality. That is where they stand. It blows my mind. It really does.
Well, then we, afterwards spoke to him, and he was like, I said, how did you get to this place? And he was like, well, and he told me some stories where these people who were Christians treated him terribly.
I was going to say that's probably the source.
And so it's like, but here's the thing that really did blow his mind, because when I did ask that, and I said, well, when you adopt this idea of atheism, true atheism, there is no God, the very premise of science and you believing you're even real, that your brain isn't just in a jar somewhere with someone prodding it with electrodes, or that it's not just sitting somewhere and just activating on its own, not reacting to a real stimulus, but that the fact that effects can happen without causes is the price tag that atheism hangs on. And I got that actually from, I don't know if you're familiar with I think his name's like the Cosmic Skeptic.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And he broke down. He was like, you know what? I'll be honest. This is the strongest argument for God. But this guy had never heard that before. And when he was like, wait, a Christian is saying this, his mind was like rattled. He was like looking for, I was like, dude, you lost this one. I didn't say that to him, but I was like, he's forced to wrestle with the idea that, like, the real reason I'm this is not because this makes sense, because now I'm faced with, he's forcing me to look at the fact that this doesn't make sense.
By the way, shout out to that Cosmic Skeptic guy, because that's an example of someone being on the opposite team, being able to have very high quality discussions. Like,
and he's used to
there's
raping.
no emotion. There's no emotions involved, and the guy is just brilliant. Like he stands toe to toe with like William Lane Craig, and they have a great discussion. And he's like 20. I don't know.
He's got a big brain.
Yeah.
He did say, because of that fact that William Lane Craig brought up, which is the one I was talking about. He did say, well, and he said this to someone else too, the thing that does keep me up at night is, do I actually exist? And then to which Craig was like, yeah, well, that's the price tag of atheism right there. Yeah. And he was like, oh, well, yeah, I guess it is.
Even Dawkins went to, like, there's aliens. Like, that was his. And a lot of these atheists, they actually consider themselves cultural Christians. So they culturally accept the idea that this is the best way to go about things morally and fundamentally, but they still can't subscribe to having a God. But they'll go, there's probably some intelligent life form out there, maybe some aliens that helped along with this whole process. So they're still giving acknowledgement to a higher life form, so to speak. Right. They still end up in that same place.
Let's we got that video up. We're running out of time here, so let's check it out.
How would you define the gospel or the good news?
How would I define it?
In your own words.
You're tuned in to CAZ TV.
What's going on, everybody? Zach Richardson,
John Luca.
And we are going to be interviewing people today throughout the city in all different denominations and churches, asking them one question.
What is the gospel or the good news?
What is the gospel? So let's go. In your own words, how would you define the gospel or the good news?
I think that the gospel would be, that's something to think about. Okay, so the gospel I would think would be the teaching of it. The good news is we're sharing the good news of the gospel, but I don't know. That sounds...
What would you say is the good news of the gospel?
Jesus, the good news, sharing about his life and what happened and how he sacrificed. But that would be my good news, to share his good news. That's the good news, that we are free.
So, in my opinion, what I've been taught my whole life is that the gospel is it's the New Testament, right? It's the understanding that Jesus is he is the good news. He is our Savior. He is our ability to go to heaven. He is everything we will ever need. He is true happiness in its fullest extent. In your own words,
what is your understanding or your definition of the gospel, aka the good news?
Yeah, I would say that it's awesome that we're saved by grace plus nothing. In other words, we looked at the law, we saw how the law was almost impossible to keep, and then Jesus comes along and he willingly goes and dies on a cross so our sins can be forgiven and we don't have to earn it. We don't have to work for it. We should work and do good things for God because we love him, but we can't earn that salvation. It was by grace plus nothing that Jesus went to a cross and died for me so I could be free to live in eternity one day. Isn't that good news?
That sounds like good news.
That's good news, brother.
Thank you. In your own words, how would you define the good news or the gospel?
How would I define it?
Yeah.
Love. That was Jesus' message. Love everybody, regardless race, creed, color. Love.
In your own words, how would you define the gospel or the good news?
Sharing the love of Jesus with others.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if someone doesn't know anything about church, God, or whatever, they're like, hey, I heard you guys talking about the good news. What is that? What would you say?
Telling people about grace and mercy, and that's the only way you can get it, and just, yeah, you need his love.
In your own words, as briefly as you'd like or as in-depth as you'd like, what is your understanding or your definition of the gospel, aka the good news?
The first thing that comes to mind is just Jesus's words. You know, every time I read the gospel, you know, Jesus is saying something. And in my head, that's the most important, you know, some of the most important books of the Bible, just because it's, you know, God walking around. So, yeah.
So the good news in your definition is like, if someone were to say, okay, well, it's good news. What's the good news? What would you say to that?
That Jesus was here and he was you know, the greatest man that ever lived, and that he's God, and that he cares about all of us.
Cool, thanks. So in your
This one, you got to watch this one. You got to watch this one. You can't stop it on this one right here.
your own words, as quickly as you can, how would you define the gospel, aka the good news?
Jesus loves you.
Okay. In your own words, how would you define the gospel?
So hold on, let me maybe fast forward past this one, but there was one more that is kind of like, really? Keep going. I'll tell you when I see the thumbnail for it. Keep going. Keep going. Matt, keep going. Keep going. He probably answered the best.
Hopefully.
Keep going. Right. Keep going. There. Yeah, just back up just a little. Yeah, right there.
So that we can spend eternity in heaven.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you. So in your own words, how would you define, as quickly or as long as you'd want, the good news or the gospel?
The good news is that Jesus loves me, and he is giving me the ability to live into who I really am.
Okay. In your own words.
God, dude. I've seen Sunday schools with like babies. Oh God, I'm beyond.
So here's the thing. We thought it was I thought some of it was kind of funny at first, but then it made me really worried.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. Here's the thing that worried me the most, though. There was a church that we went to where the pastor actually kicked us out.
What?
And he was like, "Yeah, kicked us out." I don't know.
He's probably embarrassed, dude. He's probably embarrassed.
I don't want to say his reasons, but he kicked us out. I mean, now I'll say this: there were two people on there that were from his church that gave a great answer, but there were also people that said, hey, I can be who I really am, or something like that. And so we wanted to see if there was a difference between denominations, what we would get. That was the real kind of experiment.
How many did you check?
We hit a Catholic church. We hit a non-denominational. We hit a Baptist, and then it was 4. And then another one that was like over the mountain non-denomination. I don't know. It was another non-denominational.
I'm guessing the Catholics did the best.
So the priest did really well, but
Well, he's not. Yeah, I mean,
yeah. So I would say they did better than I thought. They had I think 3 out of 5 of the Catholics got it really right. 2 of them. One of the guy was like, "Oh man, I'll be honest, I don't know." The other guy was the guy that said
respect.
He said Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and then we were like, "No, like the good news. I get the Gospels, but." And then he was like, "Well, Jesus was just walking around doing stuff."
So was there a clear winner in terms of denomination and their
I would say in the few that we did. I mean, we didn't do a big enough pool for there to be for us to conclude a winner, really. But I would say out of those few that we did, it was probably Catholic that did the best, which I was surprised by, because one of the issues that I have is at the Catholic Church, many times a lot of the congregation doesn't even know what the gospel is. Like the good news.
But are those the people showing up to Mass?
Yeah, you have a lot of people showing up to Mass, and unfortunately, I think they learn more about Catholic doctrine rather than the Bible.
Rituals, yeah.
Right. Rather than the rituals pointing to Christ, it's Christ pointed to the rituals.
Yeah. Right.
And
that's why Luther came in the whole 95 thesis and the Reformation. Thank you, Mike. Lutheran.
Yeah.
Anglican.
So,
you know, it'd be a cool question too. Just as a social, just to get more refinement on the stats here, is to ask the person, how long have you been a believer?
Yeah. Ruslan said we should do the same thing. We had him to kind of look at it. He said, yeah, the only thing I would have changed was I would have said, how long has the person been a believer? Because that person may have showed up today, and you're asking them that.
Yeah, it would qualify their answer, because like a lot of people, it's like the love of Christ. I get that, you know, and you know, it'd
be fun to go to some of these woke churches too. Like I have right across the street from my house is literally a church with a giant, like they have their sign out front, switching signs all the time. It's digital, and it's like, you know, rainbow flag and Black Lives Matter and trans rights are human rights. Like that's what it cycles. I really want to go there and just go to have a conversation.
It's be like, so do you read the Bible?
Yeah.
Do you guys open that up in church?
There's a guy on YouTube that does that. You guys should bring him on sometime. I watch his videos. He has all he does is he just goes to like these woke churches and talks to them, and they all kick him out.
Yeah.
They all like
hey,
kick him
Zach,
out.
you better ask the question that you or answer the question you asked. Star asked, "What's the good news of the gospel?"
The good news is the fact that there's a perfect God. And we have to walk in front of that perfect God one day. And we are not perfect. And he's a perfect, just judge. And he decided to make a way where we do not have to suffer that punishment by dying on the cross for us and offering all men salvation. And so that if we choose, not that all men will choose that, but offer a way for everybody to be saved, to pay a debt that none of us could pay. That's why it's good news, because there was bad news first.
Yeah, you gotta be risen from the. I think the whole idea that is not communicated in the gospel is conquering death, and why the only guarantee you have in life is death. Huh?
You mean that it's not communicated at church?
The deficit in the gospel description that's in not being communicated in the church is what conquering death is. Because in order to understand the need for a change in life, you need to understand what death is, and nobody has an answer for that. No one knows. Everybody's guaranteed it. So what did Christ do? He conquered death. He rose from the dead after living a perfect life. I think there's some core tenets within the Bible and the Gospels that are expressed, you know, that you need to know, because those, if you're talking about the human condition, it's feeling death anxiety and not knowing what's going to happen next, and having a solution to that is the gospel, but you need to be able to describe how Christ conquered death, why he died on a cross, why he rose from the dead. Otherwise, it's just sounds like a nice story, but there's pragmatic purpose in every one of these things beyond the symbolism that allows you to answer the questions to the atheists and the people who think deeply. Because if you just think Christ loves you, your definition of love is not, it's your definition. It's not God's definition of love. And the good news is that God's definition of love is self-sacrifice, an altruistic mode of being to be able to get fulfillment in Christ. And you need to understand why he died and rose from the dead.
Right.
Period.
Well, and I think too, along with that, they mentioned a lot of these like Jesus loves you type thing. Like that message is really not unique. The moral side of Christianity that they're saying, like that message, philosophies, have morals, and like that's not unique. It's the gospel message itself that's unique that you just described.
Yeah. What is love? Tell them what the pagan, dig into that. They might like to hear that. This is super fascinating to me because at the end of the day, everything has a reason. And the reason why people have an identity crisis now is because they don't know their past. They don't know their past, and they cannot make a future because of it. So history is crucial. And understanding why we have split time in two different directions, from AD to BC, by one man, and the difference in the impact that it had on the world, what was going on before Christ died on the cross, and why did we separate time? They're two different worlds. They're literally two different worlds. In one world, we were doing pagan worship. You had Enoch, you had Moloch, you had Baal, and we were constantly within all the religions. You look at all the religions, we had sacrifice. The Jews did this too, to gain fertility of the land, to gain fertility within a battle, a positive outcome. We would sacrifice something that was pure, and usually, like the Canaanites, they would sacrifice children to Baal, to Moloch. All right, it was a bronze statue, and they would put the children inside the belly as they lit it on fire, and they would let them burn alive in there. And they would do this before battle. They would do this to incur a better harvest. And we were always sacrificing. You could think about this, like John said earlier, as a scapegoat, okay? Because humans, we need a scapegoat. We need something to blame. We need some type of sacrifice because it gives us catharsis, and it gives us this ability to move on. And what it is essentially is redemption. It's redemption. It is resurrection. We kill something so that we can have life, right? It's the cosmogenic cycle. It's death, then life. So we sacrifice something perfect, something innocent, to death. It never lived a life. It's a child. There's no reason why it should die. It's the last thing that should die. But we're going to kill this so that we might have a harvest. We're going to sacrifice one of our purest things so that you can have a harvest. This is the way the world oriented itself, right? Then we have Christ, and it was always told from the hero's position, which is a big difference. Christ was told from the victim's position. The story is from the victim's position. It's not from the hero. It's not like Gilgamesh. It's not like Osiris. It's not like any of these other ancient heroes, right? It's told from the victim's position. And God himself is offering the perfect sacrifice, the single sacrifice. The end of religion is what he's offering us, which is the conquering of death, the conquering of this reoccurring cycle. It's a loop. And he's allowing us to usher in now, continue what we did in the garden, because we were always below. You'd always fallen. There's three falls. There's the fall of Adam and Eve, there's the fall of Cain, and then there's the fall of Noah. Babel too.
And then there's Babel. So we're in a fallen state. When you get with Christ dying, we're able, and the perfect sacrifice being in place, the conquering of death, we're able to now start our work that we started in the garden, which is co-creating heaven here on earth with Christ, with God. That's what we do as Christians. We have the Holy Spirit inside of us now. God lives in each one of us now. That's the great thing about the Gospels. When Christ died, the Holy Spirit got put into all of us. Christ lives in all of us. He's actually inside. The Holy Spirit is right there. The power is right there. So God's saying, let's co-create, let's continue our work that we did in the Garden of Adam and Eve,
and let's get to work here. Stop messing around with this worldly garbage, right? That's a whole nother conversation in its own. But that is the real, true good news. Is that's the work we're put here to do. That's your purpose.
Yep. Well, I think we're at the 2-hour mark. Probably a good place to wrap it up, I suppose. Zach, where can the audience find you?
CAZ_TV on Instagram, and then
YouTube, I think, is the same.
I gotta check.
We got
YouTube,
the links in the description.
Yeah, links are in the description. YouTube channel is in the title. Just click there. Me and C Love, the other guy that does CAZ TV with me, we go live on Instagram.
Usually on Wednesdays, right?
Usually, yeah. Lately, it's been whenever guests can like hop on. But we did skits. We do a lot of reaction videos. But we're going to start trying to transition back to doing some lives on YouTube like this. So check us out. We talk about controversial topics, but we always try to have a good discussion and be respectful, and but not quiet and passive. And oh, yeah, you're right. We point out flaws. We try to be truthful, honest, and we try to have a good time. So
right on.
Yeah, you guys get some good guests. So check them out. And I guess we'll probably see you guys next week. I think we'll have Will on from Ren of Men next. And
Renaissance of Men. Yeah.
Yep. Looking forward to that.
Yeah. It's been a pleasure getting to meet you, brother.
Yeah.
Been a pleasure, man.
Well, I'll be honest with you, man. I know you guys came on once before because you have an identical twin. I didn't know which one I met before.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think it was Joe that time.
Yeah,
Okay,
Christian
okay.
and we all hang up. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, thanks for having me on, man. Maybe, we need to get Christian on, and maybe sometime we can come down and meet you guys in person. Do something.
Oh,
there.
for sure.
That'd be great, man.
We'd love
That'd
that.
be great. And let's be men about this. Let's man the helms.
Yeah.
Keep spreading the word. But all right, guys, have a good one.
Nice
See ya.
to see you.
Appreciate it.